Coming up on Mountain News at 5:30, one person is dead and another hurt after a UTV crash in Powell County during the weekend. We'll have the latest. And several Supreme Court justices expressed concerns about the government not being able to combat controversial social media posts.
And winter is not done yet. The details on a hard freeze coming up as Mountain News at 5:30 starts now.
Dedicated to southern and eastern Kentucky, this is WYMT Mountain News at 5:30.
Good evening, I'm Steve Hensley. The Supreme Court heard arguments today in a case that tests how far the federal government can go in pressuring social media companies to remove content it believes spreads misinformation. CBS's Skylar Henry reports from Washington.
Make some noise for free speech!
Groups who say their voices have been silenced by the government rallied outside the Supreme Court Monday as the justices heard arguments about whether the Biden administration went too far combating controversial posts on social media.
The First Amendment, had it been heeded during the pandemic, would have saved lives. And I hope the court does the right thing by restoring the First Amendment to this country.
The case, Murphy versus Missouri, arose out of efforts during the early months of the Biden administration to push social media platforms to take down posts that officials said spread falsehoods about the pandemic and the 2020 presidential election, with lower courts ruling that federal employees could not coerce or significantly encourage a platform's content moderation decisions.
Government can't just run rampant pressuring platforms to censor private speech.
Some justices appeared skeptical of the challenge to the Biden administration's actions.
What do you do with the fact that the platforms say no all the time to the government?
Your Honor, it doesn't matter.
Attorneys for the Biden administration argued that the federal officials' actions amounted to persuasion, not coercion.
Government speech crosses the line into coercion only if, viewed objectively, it conveys a threat of adverse government action. And because no threats happened here, the court should reverse.
A decision on the case is expected in June. Skylar Henry, CBS News, the Supreme Court.
The Supreme Court is also considering a First Amendment appeal from the National Rifle Association. The NRA's complaint surrounds a former New York financial regulator reportedly pressuring banking and insurance companies to cut ties with the group. Today, Justice Sonia Sotomayor asked if the New York Financial Services Superintendent Maria Vullo was seeking a ban on potentially lawful programs. The American Civil Liberties Union is representing the NRA in the case. Today, the Supreme Court declined to review a ruling that removed a New Mexico official from office over the Capitol attack. The appeal to the High Court came from convicted January 6 Capitol rioter and former Otero County Commissioner Coy Griffin. Griffin, who founded the group Cowboys for Trump, was removed from office in 2022 for actions on January 6th. He was the first elected official kicked out of office under the 14th Amendment's insurrectionist ban. Former President Trump is having trouble securing a $464 million appeal bond in the fraud judgment against him and his sons. Today, Trump's attorneys told a New York appeals court that getting the bond is a, quote, practical impossibility. Trump's legal team says they have reached out to 30 underwriters to back the bond, but potential insurers are seeking cash to back the bond, not properties, according to Trump's lawyers. The former Trump campaign chairman who went to jail for bank and tax fraud may be back on the Republican payroll soon. Paul Manafort could be tapped to help with the former president's re-election efforts. According to sources familiar with the conversations, Manafort might help with fundraising efforts for the Republican National Convention in July. Manafort was one of several people who ran Trump's presidential campaign in 2016. Former presidential candidate Asa Hutchinson says he will not endorse Donald Trump for president. Hutchinson penned an op-ed in USA Today on Monday that explained his reasoning. The former Arkansas governor said the former president disqualified himself to be commander-in-chief again when a mob of his supporters attacked the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021. Hutchinson went on to say Trump has continued to undermine democracy by defending the actions of that day. The Justice Department is asking the Supreme Court to reject Peter Navarro's request not to report to prison. He's the former Trump advisor sentenced in September to 4 months in prison for contempt of Congress. That's because he ignored a subpoena from the House Select Committee investigating January 6th. Navarro is scheduled to report to a prison in Miami by 2 p.m. Tuesday. He wants to stay out until his appeal is heard, but 2 lower courts have rejected that request. Authorities in Tennessee have released new video in connection to the case of a missing college student. On Monday, Metro Nashville Police released this video showing a brief exchange between Riley Strain and an officer the night of March 8th. Video from earlier shows the 22-year-old University of Missouri student stumbling and falling after friends say he was kicked out of a bar. The next morning, the friends called police when they realized he was missing.
Thank you for getting the word out and keeping the word out, and please don't stop sharing. Don't stop sharing till we bring Riley home.
Authorities did find Strain's debit card on the bank of the Cumberland River, not far from where he was last seen. Teams are continuing to search the river for any sign of the missing student.
We are tracking a weak weather system on this Monday. For most of us, we are dry, but notice on first alert pinpoint Doppler, possibly a few sprinkles or maybe a few snow flurries for portions of our region. I do think most of this is evaporating before it hits the ground, but don't be surprised to see possibly a few snowflakes as we go into this evening. Zooming into places close to I-64 in Rowan County, pushing into Morgan County, also close to Johnson County and Paintsville, and same story close to I-75 from Rockcastle County through Laurel County, also pushing into places in Pulaski County as well. Now again, I do think most of this is not reaching the ground, but we could possibly see a few flurries or a few sprinkles as we go into this evening. For most of us across the region, we are dry under a few peaks of sunshine for Perry County, but some more overcast conditions for Pikeville, also close to Laurel County as well. But the big story on this Monday, we are chilly. Most of us right now in the upper 30s to lower 40s, up to 34 in Moorhead, 35 over in Jackson. Also tracking some gusty winds, gusting to 26 in Jackson and gusting to 25 over in Harlan at this hour. So as we go into tonight, we are tracking some cooler and drier and more clear conditions. So as a result, those lows are going to be frigid as you wake up on Tuesday in the middle 20s. But some more improvements are on the way by Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Those details coming up in just a few minutes. Steve?
Cameron, thank you. With the NCAA tournament starting later this week, we want to tell you about our bracket contest. Basketball Mayhem is back. You can just scan the QR code there on your screen and submit your bracket for a chance to win an iPad sponsored by Appalachian Wireless, a big screen television, and a Food City gift card. You can submit your bracket up until 15 minutes before the first tournament game on Thursday. For more on the contest rules, visit WYMT.com. Coming up on Mountain News at 5:30, if you do not know how many credit cards you have or how much you owe, you may have what's called uncontrollable debt. Tips to help you get back on track.
Plus, protect those plants as temperatures plummet overnight. Your forecast after this break.